Hi, welcome to the World Poetry Café Adult Tent. My name's Ian Whiteley. I'm a poet from Wakefield in West Yorkshire in England. I write quite a lot of political poetry and I write about historical events from a modern perspective. I also like to write about spiritual and religious events, although I'm not deeply religious. This first poem tells the story of how American folk music was born on that continent and has travelled the world as a popular music form. It's called The Walking Man. Serendipity Spangle was a walking man, of that there is no doubt. He walked across great continents and was seen round hereabout. With his low-slung jeans and guitar, he had no need for fancy suits. He just roamed the great blue yonder in his worn-down cowboy boots. Those who were there at his birth cross their hearts and tell no lie. They say he came into this world singing and walked straight from his mamma's thighs, out into the Dust Bowl Road out there, where he promptly disappeared, into the heart of America, and was folk and country reared. He walked the fields of Gettysburg, dried the tears of the crying. He strolled the trenches of the Somme and comforted the dying. He raised the flag at Iwo Jima, hung his head at Nagasaki, stirred the spirit in Vietnam. His heart is red and khaki. He's been around a long, long time, and many times he's died, but he walks into the valley of the shadow of death and comes out the other side with a pale horse trailing behind him, riderless and out of breath. Serendipity Spangle always wins the wrestle with death. For the poor, the weak, the hopeless, he will pacify the soul. The depressed, the hurt, the dispossessed, chew it up and swallow it whole. With his raging songs of freedom, you will hear the old folk talk of the time that Mr. Spangle stopped by on his long walk. You hear his footsteps echoing along these highways of dust when Bob or Bruce or Pete Seeger ask you to place your trust in poetry and a guitar and a minstrel of the road. Serendipity Spangle will help you carry your heavy load. A lonely figure steps out and walks into the moon at the top of a country road, whistling a mournful tune. When the sun rises tomorrow, his footsteps will have blown away in a warm and soothing prairie breeze, walking into another day. I also like to write about war poetry. I wrote quite a few poems about the First World War and looking back in perspective as to what that was all about. And this one's about the recruitment campaign that led to the formation of what were called the Pals Armies, where whole communities joined up together, and it was designated by a poster of Lord Kitchener pointing and asking for recruits. This is called War Boys. Your country needs you. We're going to war, boys. We're going to war. Lord Kitchener asked us, so we formed a corps. Joe and Jack from the factory, Ted and Jim from the farm. The recruiting sergeant assures us that there's little chance of harm. We're part of the great Pal's army and we've fallen for his charm as we march away to war. We're in the war, boys, we're in the war. We think we were lied to, but we're not too sure. Bullets are flying everywhere, some of them get quite near. Our cocky, jaunty demeanour is now riddled through with fear. Our pals are dying everywhere, there's no time to shed a tear as we fight this blooming war. We're sick of the war, boys, we're sick of the war. We've had enough of it, can't take any more. I've seen friends explode in pieces. I've seen bone and guts and blood. And everywhere we march, there's this terrible stinking mud. And when a shell flies by you, you're just praying it's a dud. We're so sick of this war. I'm home from the war, boys. I'm home from the war. Just me and my own boys from 104. They died like cattle in the field, cut down by bayonet and shell, sucked into the earth like they were journeying to hell. All my friends died horribly, only I was left to tell of the boys who went to war. I'm still in the war, boys, I'm still in the war. I talk to friends who were with me before. I see their muddy faces, I hear their mournful boasts, buried under Flanders fields so they can't desert their posts. I'm no longer with the living, I'm just drifting with the ghosts of the boys who went to war. This is a political one, but it's also about the war in a way. When soldiers were marching to war in 1914, they were told that they'd return to a land fit for heroes, and that hasn't always been the case. They're still waiting in a lot of cases. And this was written for the mining communities who bring the banners and the flags into Wakefield, where I'm from, and march into the city centre. And it was those communities that were devastated most by that war. It's called Raising the Standards with Banners Held High. You said that you wanted a land fit for heroes, a place to call home that they'd show off with pride. But somewhere along the way you forgot the reasons they fought and the reasons they died. They thought they were fighting for honour and justice, suppressing the tyrants and saving our land. Return to a future that punished the workers for banding together and making a stand. So your songs are all dirges to heroically fallen, your words all platitudes for the loss of life. Your actions speak louder than all of your promises, where lies are pandemic and betrayals are rife. 'Cause they died in the trenches with promises hollow, driving them forward and ringing in ears, while you pocketed money that should have been spent making jobs for survivors and easing the fears. Now we march all together and sing for the future while honouring those who we lost in the past. We still want to believe all the promises made as our young men were slaughtered, dismembered and gassed. Prosperity offered like chocolate at Christmas, peace in our times and everlasting hope. All that they got were more broken dreams, more pointless wars, more money for old rope. The bosses got fat on the toil of their workers, and the bankers got fat on their interest-rich loans, and the man who came back from the war that he fought in was treated no better than the graveyard of bones. So bang the drum, comrade, and never forget that if silence is demanded, then shout and be loud, and don't let this government try to sell history as though it is something for which we should be proud. A century has passed and they've destroyed the mines, they've doused the steel furnaces, grounded the docks, left northern communities suffering and reeling in the self-proclaimed privatised school of hard knocks. There are still poor people living in poverty. Food banks are prevalent, folk on the street. They cannot look after the homeless and feeble, and the old cannot pay for their lighting and heat. From the mud of the trenches they came back home, their future as grey as the clothes on their back. They demanded we give them something to cling to, a future of light in their visions of black. England's green fields, the red of the blood, the gold we were promised, the blue of the sky. These are the colours we raise as our standard, marching together with banners held high. This next one's an historical piece which I wrote for the bicentenary of the Peterloo massacre in Manchester, and it tells the true story of what happened on the day from a very unique perspective. This is called Under August Skies. We sat around the table, ma'am, but none of us got fed, 'cause the corn law has been biting and we don't have any bread. The mill wheels have stopped turning, so we haven't any jobs, and we're underrepresented by the parliamentary knobs. So we gathered in the field, ma'am, with our banners and our flags, and the soldiers sat in lines with their brightly coloured nags. We were organised but unarmed, adamant we would not yield, as we marched in peaceful protest, arm in arm to St. Peter's Field. There were tens of thousands there, ma'am, under baking August heat. And when Mr. Hunt got up to speak, we all jumped up to our feet, and a huge roar went round the crowd as everybody cheered. But that was just the signal that the local magistrate feared. He called up the hussars, ma'am. He sent them in so we'd disperse, and the air was filled with shrieks, ma'am, and I don't know what was worse. The slashing sabres on our backs, or the blood that soaked the ground, or the groans of all the wounded, or the chaos all around. There were soldiers in the field, ma'am, and they all had swords and guns, and they hacked their way through daughters, and they hacked their way through sons. They hacked their way through husbands, and they hacked their way through wives, and they didn't care a jot for the loss of poor folks' lives. Sorry I didn't come home, ma'am, but I'm lying next to John, trampled by the horses. Now the horses have all gone. There are 15 other mothers who will grieve the same as you over this bloody mess in Manchester. Pray for the dead of Peterloo. This is another one about the First World War. When it started, a lot of the press and the people in the country were saying that the soldiers would be home by Christmas. And obviously it took 4 or 5 years before that actually happened. But this is the story of one soldier who did return that first Christmas. It's a villanelle called Home by Christmas. I fear I let my feelings rule my head, that you would have no trouble getting leave. You would be home by Christmas, as they said. All through the autumn, sleeping cold in bed, I dreamt of all our marriage would achieve. I fear I let my feelings rule my head. Not since the day that both of us were wed had we, Miss Carol, sung that holy eve. You would be home by Christmas, as they said. Yet as the letters came, all proudly read, your tales of valour soon made me believe. I fear I let my feelings rule my head. Friends home on leave said you had taken lead. Only wounded, it hardly tore your sleeve. You would be home by Christmas, as they said. The truth was that my husband dear was dead. His body boxed and sent back I could grieve. I fear I let my feelings rule my head. You would be home by Christmas, as they said. This next one is a political poem. I'm a socialist, and there are a lot of things wrong in my country at the moment, and this poem was done to try and highlight some of those things. It's called Screaming Blue Murder. I'm screaming blue murder at the state of the nation and how we blame our ills on Muslims and immigration, talking about people as though they're an infestation. I'm screaming blue murder. I'm screaming blue murder at the bankers' greed and the people on the street who we can't seem to feed, the way that we trample on sexuality and creed. I'm screaming blue murder. I'm screaming blue murder at the disheartening mess of the education system, transport and the NHS, and how we're going to get out of it is anybody's guess. I'm screaming blue murder. I'm screaming blue murder at the neo-fascist rise, about how we're indoctrinated by Tory newspaper lies and the way we look away when an industry dies. I'm screaming blue murder. I'm screaming blue murder that the rich are getting more, while 0-hour contracts are hammering the poor, and the way we still find money to support another war. I'm screaming blue murder. I'm screaming blue murder at intolerance and hate, the way you can't criticise a persecution state without being dragged into anti-Semitic debate. I'm screaming blue murder. I'm screaming blue murder for all the bluster and fuss caused by unsupported facts on the side of a bus, how just 1/3 of the country somehow speaks for all of us. I'm screaming blue murder. I'm screaming blue murder at what this government's done to the weak and vulnerable, to the poor man and his son, and as they stand accused with a smoking gun, I'm screaming blue murder. My heart is on the left and my blood is red. Austerity doesn't work, it has to be said. Our ethics and our values are morally dead. I'm screaming blue murder. My dad was a sergeant major in Burma in the Second World War, and when he came home, he brought home a bayonet as a sort of war souvenir and kept it in the house. And when we were born, my mum said he had to put it outside the house, and he took it and put it in a shed. And we kept pestering him to find out what he'd done in the war, and he wouldn't tell us until we were much older. This is a metaphor poem, really, about what soldiers bring home from war and why they won't talk about it. And it's a tribute to my dad. It's called The Bayonet in the Shed. He put it there in 49 in a woodworm-riddled drawer, wrapped it in a greasy rag, a remnant from the war. On top of it he laid his medals. Nothing more was said until the day my father took the bayonet from the shed. We'd pestered many times, and he had said, perhaps, when we asked him if it killed any Krauts or any Japs. His eyes fixed on something far away, as though searching for the dead, but we found out what we wanted when he took the bayonet from the shed. He was a sergeant major in the hellhole that was Burma, where the Japanese snipers would target you on a murmur. He was proud of the campaign and the boys that he had led, but he never ever talked about the bayonet in the shed. He didn't hate all foreigners, and he said the greatest worker that he had ever met in the war was good old Johnny Gurkha, that being brave wasn't about killing, he was happy when they fled. Then he went down the garden and took the bayonet from the shed. He was gone a short while, and when we saw him coming back, he was no longer marching along a hero's track. We witnessed the aged warrior return with heavy tread, shoulders slumped in surrender, with the bayonet from the shed. He moved the cloth reverently and laid the medals by its side, and for the first time in my life we watched as my father cried. We sat with him and looked at it and thought of bodies that had bled after being introduced to the bayonet in the shed. Another metaphor poem, another mystical one of some sort. This is about the changing of the seasons and about how when you get older, you wish that you could have some of that time back again. This is called The Cycle of the Scarecrow. A scarecrow in autumnal sheen thinks of all that he has been. His age-old frame begins to lean as bitter winds blow in so keen. He longs for days of evergreen, so buys back time, wipes the slate clean, gives his soul to the pumpkin queen, the witch who walks at Halloween. A scarecrow in the wax moonlight is snowed upon one winter's night, and as the crystal's soft alight, he dreams perhaps some day he might take footsteps off into the bright ice world, his skeletal delight, some hours later fat and white, with snow flesh waiting for coal sight. A scarecrow in a cutting rain watches his slush slide down the drain, and as it leaves he feels the pain as bones of wood protrude and drain. Weak sunlight sows the sleeping grain as he is called upon again to stand guard over crops, attain dominance over winter's stain. A scarecrow dries in summer sun, knowing that once more he's won the right of those which he is won to face the crows of Albion. Then as the solstice webs are spun and shadows lengthen, days done, he knows that he cannot outrun what autumn's beetles have begun. A scarecrow in autumnal sheen thinks of all that he has been. His age-old frame begins to lean as bitter winds blow in so keen. He longs for days of evergreen, so buys back time, wipes the slate clean, gives his soul to the pumpkin queen, the witch who walks at Halloween. In that poem I mentioned a reference to the crows of Albion, and that's a project that I am involved in where I put some of my poetry to songs, create them into songs and take them into a studio and record songs with them. And this was one of those. It's a poem about the Tolpuddle martyrs, who were probably the inspiration and the lead for trade unions in the United Kingdom. This was written as a poem about them, and it's also a song on an album that I've done. It's called English Martyr. 'Twas the 24th of February 1834 when the Tolpuddle sheriff came a-knocking at my door. Served with a warrant, I was swiftly dragged away for taking an illegal oath to challenge my meagre pay. You see, we were only paid 6 shillings a week for working the squire's land, so we set up a trade union, and in our little band there was James Hammett and James Brine, Thomas Stanfield and his son John, my brother James and I, George Lovelace, together to right a wrong. They had already cut our wage 3 times in just as many years, and the revolution across the channel had raised landowners' fears. So when the squire, John Frampton, got wind of what we'd done, he decided to stamp the union out and quell our rebellion. The 6 of us met in the village neath the shade of a sycamore tree. We talked about our plans, took an oath of secrecy, but for this simple action we would lose our reputation, sentenced to hard labour, and 7 years transportation. In prison I scribbled some words. We raised the watchword liberty and added as an afterthought, we will be free. Simple words from a simple man, not signalling aggression, just asking for the working class to rise up against oppression. And comrades rallied to the cause so that every politician took heed of the voice of the country as thousands signed a petition. But it took them 3 long years before they listened to the plea and sent us home as heroes, pardons granted, safe and free. Some called we 6 martyrs, but that don't sit well with me. Just lessons learned that justice can be served with unity. So when they come to take you, band together, don't bend the knee. Stand up and be counted, forged in solidarity. Here's another war story from the First World War. Right at the end of the war, in July 1918, a factory in Chilwell in Derbyshire was there was an accident at it, and a lot of people were killed, and they were all women. And it was an armaments factory, and one of the bombs had detonated and blown the whole place up. And the girls who worked there were called Canary Girls because their skin turned yellow and their hair turned green because of the chemicals they were using on the bombs. So this is a ballad royale, and it tells a story of those who worked there. It's called Canary Girl. When she went there, her eyes were clear. Just 17, her skin was fair. She was my love, my Jeannie dear. She wore blue ribbons in her hair of blonde, and I could only stare and wonder at her beauty wild. The sweet songbird, my only child. She had a voice that raised good cheer. When Jeannie sang, we were aware in chapels and after a beer that angel song was not as rare as what my daughter chose to share. We were transfixed, bewitched, beguiled. The sweet songbird, my only child. She handled bombs for just a year, harsh chemicals which took great care, and always there a nagging fear that woke her often with a scare of letting slip the dread nightmare, a spark that left the shell defiled. The sweet songbird, my only child. When she left there, I shed a tear. Her hair was green, not for a dare, but that's what all the girls have here in Chilwell, where the very air turned skin a yellow shade, and there she lay among the bodies piled. The sweet songbird, my only child. This next one is inspired probably from reading too much Stephen King and Peter Straub. It's about losing friends mainly, but it's about the consequences of your actions during your life. It's called That Which Autumn Leaves. The clowns were funny in the ring as they joked and tumbled and fell, but in the camp after the show they made our young lives hell. Still in the mass of garish paint and drunk on vodka shots, they cut and bruised and beat us, hatching cruel, twisted plots. I never saw the demons lurking safe behind the masks, and who would have suspected them as they went about their tasks? We couldn't tell our parents, although so great was our need to escape the vile clutches, blaming clowns indeed. So as they slept in caravans, painted in autumn shades, some friends and I crept up on them, our young hearts so afraid. We lit a little fire underneath the sleeping nest, and jammed tree branches in their doors. Oh, what a jolly jest! We banged nails in the window frames and waited for the screams, as those inside rushed at the door. I hear them in my dreams. They cursed and swore unholy vengeance in strange Romany tongues as flames and smoke lapped around them and scorched into their lungs. The paint on every caravan peeled and bubbled like hell, and we swore an oath between us that we would never, ever tell. We stood at the far side of the field as the garish wagons burned. The shades of autumn lit the sky as one by one we turned. The shrieks in the night sounded like frenzied jesters frying in a 3-ring circus of the night. The children stopped their crying. The shades of autumn blurred across an unforgiving sky. We even raised the alarm ourselves as we waited for them to die. Our handiwork went undetected, just more ash in the rubble. None of us were suspected then, and no one got into trouble. But now my friends have all passed on, as age comes to us all. Every autumn I wait for them to come around and call. For every year since that fateful day, as the night sky burns in season of falling leaves and epitaphs, they seem to have a reason to return to that scorched cradle and pitch their caravan in the same spot in that killing field where years ago we ran. I fear them not for our redemptive past, but because I see the eyes of Paul, Peter, John and Mark, and hear their mournful cries spilling from the cracked and crumbled grease paint faces of each and every ghost that visit me upon that night I dread and fear the most. When autumn visits with the clowns, I come to realise that I stand in the twilight of my life, and winter soon will rise. The flaming oranges will pass and give way to the white, smudged with the ashes of my guilt and many years of lies. The clowns will wait round corners with their evil coal-black stare, and I will smell them first, the acrid scent of burning hair. In livery of orange and gold, they will open the doors wide on their caravan of collected souls, and I will step inside. I was once asked at a gig when I performed that if it was a true story. I'll let you decide. Just going to read one more. There is a collection hat on my link here, and if you've enjoyed listening to some of these and you want to make a donation, everything I make from poetry is ploughed back into poetry. So I either release songs and CDs or books, all of which are available on the biog on the pages. This last one I'll leave you with is about America at the moment. It's in 3 parts. The first part is called USMF. The second part is called Lady Liberty Weeps, and the third part is called Safety Off. And they are about the President of America, Black Lives Matter, and their gun law. I will leave you with this. Thank you for listening. This is the American Trilogy version 2.0. When the KKK and the Kremlin are sharing their vodka and rye, when redneck white supremacists are making Lady Liberty cry, when the land of the free is walled in, pesky Mexicans can't get by, that's the day the rest of us watch as America die. When the White House houses a bigot, a misogynist locker room fly, when a multi-billionaire stands for Mama's apple pie, when a name shines on a tower that reaches up to the sky, that's the day the rest of us watch as America die. When a straw-thatched Oompa-Loompa peddles a conspiracy lie, when a tax-dodging privileged hypocrite tells workers he's their kind of guy, when a bully is sitting as president and parents tell the children why, that's the day the rest of us watch as America die. In a Minnesota precinct on a Minnesota street, the day starts like any other for the Baton Rouge elite. In the land of the brave, in the land of the free, a cop with a pistol shoots liberty. A man reaches for a wallet with a target on his back. Red, white and blue, all the patrolman sees is black. Where the gun is law, the sheriff of the West has immunity to kill wearing a star on his chest. And this is the country that sets itself above the rest of the world and preaches peace and love, but it can't control the forces it creates to protect, and it can't control the hatred it chooses to elect, where every standoff is resolved by the gun. And redneck lobbyists believe the lies they have spun. Now in Dallas, Texas, there are cop killers on the street. The day ends like any other. The cycle is complete. The FBI and the CIA got 'em. Good old boys in the KKK got 'em. Even Doris Day got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. Kids in their daddy's cars got 'em. Rednecks in Dallas bars got 'em. Sheriffs with tin stars got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. The white and black and brown got 'em, old folks in Midwest towns got 'em, even the White House clown got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. Clint Eastwood and John Wayne got 'em, the holy and insane got 'em. I've heard that Citizen Kane got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. Shopkeepers in their stores got 'em, vets returning from their wars got 'em, pimps and two-bit whores got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. The Washington Post and Fox got 'em, randy high school jocks got 'em, snipers in tower blocks got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. Heroes on TV got 'em, the brave and the free got 'em, babies on their mama's knees got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. The Waltons and the Bradys got 'em, the good guys and their ladies got 'em, Tupac and Slim Shady's got 'em, but it don't make 'em safe. Every Independence Day got 'em, every bullet that goes astray got 'em, the whole of the USA got 'em, and they're never gonna be safe. 16th of October 1991, 23 dead, Luby's Cafeteria, Killeen, Texas. 4th of December 2012, 27 dead, Sandy Hook Elementary, Newtown, Connecticut. 16th of April 2007, 32 dead, Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, Virginia. 12th of June 2016, 49 dead, Pulse Nightclub, Orlando, Florida. 1st of October 2017, 58 dead, Mandalay Bay Resort, Las Vegas. And counting. Thank you for listening.